Welcome to the LA City Section basketball video. Connor Morissette and Alex Scar. Alex, unfortunately, we got the strike going on right now, so City Section hoops, besides a select few charter schools, are at a halt. And it's a shame. We want to see a lot of these games, and some big important league games are being missed.
Yeah, this will be the first of 3 weeks of league play, so hopefully we can get a resolution here quickly. I've got the strike stash going in solidarity with the teachers.
Really?
I don't know if you can tell, but give me a few weeks. If the strike lasts, I'm going to have a big old Burt Reynolds stash. But anyway.
I was wondering what that was. That's a strike stash?
It wasn't
That's
a mistake.
awesome.
That was on purpose. The strike stash
Sweet.
in solidarity with the teachers. But like we're talking about, we've got 3 weeks
I
of
would've
league
done that
play.
too.
Yeah, dude, well, still plenty of time.
Okay.
This is only day 3 of the strike.
Okay.
You have plenty of time. But we've got 3 weeks of league play. This is the first week of games that are going to be missed. Couple of weeks still left to play, and of course, seeding committees and the playoffs are looming, so they really want to get back on the court and play some of these games, because some of the teams on the bubble, they still have a chance to make the open. If they haven't made a case yet, they've got games to play that can kind of solidify that case. Can't play them, you just got to go with what you got.
So we're going to get into our top 10 like we usually do, because there have been some games since we last spoken. I know you were at that El Camino Birmingham game.
Oh, yeah.
That was a crazy one. I saw Gardena, so we'll hit on our top 10. But if this is still going on next week, we probably won't have a video because there won't be
Nothing
anything
to
to
talk
talk
about.
Yeah, so that's too bad. Have a couple game balls and the dunk of the week as well. We're still doing that. So before we get into the top 10, really quick, Alex, we had this discussion. It really looks like there are only 10 teams who kind of deserve to be in the top 10, because it has a lot to do with the Coliseum League being a little bit down.
Exactly.
The stuff that happened at Fremont makes them not as good, and you look at Dorsey's good, but they're a couple of years away. Crenshaw's having a down year. So for us, it looks like there are 10 pretty clear teams, and it'll probably stay that way for the rest of the year.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, I think we're a year too early on Dorsey. Crenshaw seems to be rebuilding, and then, of course, Fremont. Coach is gone, a couple of players are gone. That program just really took a big step back this season. So these 10 teams we've got, I think they're going to be really good 10 teams. Of course, the 8 teams make the open division, and then the final 2 will be battling in Division 1. But for now, our top 10, it's a pretty solid list.
Yep, so at 10 we have Granada Hills, and remember, if they're playing a charter school, they are a full charter school, so they're going to keep playing some games. That'll be nice. They have El Camino Real tonight at 6, and then Birmingham Friday, so it's almost like a regular week for them. They didn't play Monday against Cleveland, though. Granada, the last game they did play was against Taft, and they lost by 20 points in that one. And I think that had a little bit more to do with how good Taft is than where Granada Hills is at. And I think they're a really solid Division I team. I think losing by 20 to Taft kind of puts the writing on the wall that they won't make the Open this year after what they did last year. But it's still, they're a really good team, and they're in at number 10, a D1 favorite for me.
Yeah, if they were a regular public school and the season ended today like it looks like it might for a lot of these schools, they're guaranteed to be in Division I. But they've got Birmingham and El Camino Real on the schedule, so you think about it, hey, maybe they've got a shot. They at least have a puncher's chance in a couple of these games. Don't forget they blew out Chatsworth last week, 78-43. So this is a team that takes care of business. We talk at length about Coach Loperena and the guys he's got over there. So there are opportunities. There are chances here for this Granada Hills team. But for now, I think Division I, do they make a deep run? Absolutely. Open division, cross your fingers.
Their big 3 of Joel Carrillo, Jesse Benute, and Chris Prodan, they're going to keep them in a lot of these games down the stretch that they will be able to play. So the 2 charter schools games that they will have this week, and then from there we'll see if they're able to get some games in if the strike ends. I think they're going to be big trouble in Division I. It's a team you don't want to play. At 9, we have King Drew. They are 13-6. They're going to miss games against Washington, Port of Los Angeles, and Narbonne this week. Yeah. It's a big week for King Drew. 2 out of those 3 teams are really, really good, and they got to sit out, unfortunately. The last game they played, they lost to Beverly Hills 55-52, and we've seen it and we've talked about it. The offense is the problem for them sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm going to revise what we said last week. Okay. We said George Washington Prep, they were the team that suffered the most from the strike. I think I'm going to say it's King Drew, because these are 3 tasty matchups that could have really solidified an open division case. Talk about Port of Los Angeles, that's just a tune-up game. You're going to win that one. But, of course, you got George Washington Prep, and you got Narbonne. Both of those teams figure to be open division teams. So the strike for King Drew really coming at the worst, absolute worst time. And, yeah, the offense, that's going to be an issue. They really press in the half court. Their defense is really, really good. Billy Clark is pretty much their only offensive weapon. So they get one of those teams that kind of struggles to score points, they're going to smother them and take it away. But when they face a team that can boat race them, that can beat them in transition, they can score a lot of buckets, how does that team respond?
And they're looking to get back-to-back city championships. Remember, a year ago they won D2. Now they've moved up to D1. If they're in that D1 playoff race. I think they have a great shot. Them and Granada Hills are certainly the favorites. At 8, Narbonne, a surprising loss to them to Gardena in their most recent game, 56-51. They're supposed to play Gardena again on January 25th. If the strike is over at that point, that will be a game that decides the Marine League potentially, so we want to see them play that one for sure, but they're going to miss games, miss one Monday, going to miss Wednesday, Friday, and then miss the King Drew game that they're supposed to play Saturday. And remember, Narbonne was a team that didn't play that many games before league started, so now they're really getting double hurt by this strike. But we have them at 8 after they lose to Gardena. That was the big takeaway from a week ago. Nice win for Gardena now when Narbonne has to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, Narbonne's 9-5. Some of the other teams on our list, we're talking about Granada Hills being 10-8. You got King Drew at 13-6. We'll talk about Gardena in a minute. They're 19-1. So that's 20 games as opposed to 14 games here for Narbonne. And the strike, we talk about washing some of these games out. The seeding committee is going to go back and just base it on who you've played. So the fact that Narbonne hasn't played a ton of games, they haven't played a ton of talented teams that could come back to hurt them. And I think that loss to Gardena, we'll talk about Gardena in a second. Gardena now makes that case that, hey, we're an open division team. You're not going to put us in D1. We're going to be among the top 8. But for Narbonne, I think precariously hanging on to that 8 seed.
Gardena 19-1.
Crazy.
And they shouldn't lose again until the playoffs unless that game at Narbonne troubles them. That's the one on the schedule that they might slip up. So either a 1-loss or a 2-loss team, I think no matter what happens, they have a really good shot to make the open division after the strike.
Yeah.
And just that win against Narbonne could be so huge for them. And like we talked about in football, maybe you don't want to get into the open division, but for basketball, you lose in the first round, say, then you still are guaranteed 2 more games, and you get into a good state playoff seeding. So it's exciting if you're able to get in that open division for basketball. I saw them put the beat down on Carson almost a week ago now, and Michael Frankling had 31 in that game. Colby Kimbrough looked really great. Those were 2 guards for Gardena. They have really good guard play. I think that's what helped them beat Narbonne. So, again, the strike, I don't want to say it's helping anyone, but after beating Narbonne and now not having to play for a little bit, they got the signature win. Now they can kind of sit back and hopefully they'll play again soon. But for right now, that marquee win, they have it, and Narbonne doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Put that record on ice for now. 19-1. They're not going to play any games. We talked last week about how Gardena needs that statement win. They've got the Marine League, you got Carson, you got Narbonne. Can you get these wins that help solidify a case for the open division? And the one that they've gotten so far, and who knows how long the strike's going to last, but for right now, that win over Narbonne, it's monumental. You talk about Michael Frankling. He had a really good tournament at the San Pedro Shootout. We talked about Cam Mahan earlier in the season, but it seems like some other guys have stepped up, kind of come to the forefront, turning Gardena into a power at 19-1. I don't care who you're playing, that's taking care of business. Gardena at 7.
And into the West Valley League at 6, El Camino Real. They've dropped a little bit, Alex, because they played against Birmingham last Friday, and you were there. It looked like in the first half, El Camino Real was riding to an easy win. They had Birmingham up against the ropes, but the third quarter was totally different. And then at the end, craziness ensued, and Birmingham got the win. What happened?
Yeah, 57-55. It was a buzzer beater finish. I mean, literally with no time left to spare. They didn't even get to inbound the ball, El Camino Real. So this game was one of the best games I've ever seen. The issue here for El Camino Real, Birmingham figured out how to stop Ben Todd. They basically neutralized him. Javill Collins still had, I think, about 20 points, maybe 19 points. He was able to get his buckets. He's going to be a guy that you're not going to stop him. You might be able to slow him down, but they were able to stop Ben Todd. They made him go to his right when they know, hey, the only way he goes to his right, that's when he scores. He goes to his left, he can't do it. So they forced him to his left. He really didn't have a whole lot of touch. Some of the other guys didn't really show up, but the defense in this game was absolutely insane. Both point guards played really well. We talked about Tajai Medley and Tyrese Willis. I wanted to watch those 2 guys go at it. They seemed to be guarding other players, but when they got the ball in their hands, it was just a frenetic pace to the game. I might have had some doubts about Birmingham. They're 10-10 this season.
Did, yeah.
I do not have doubts anymore.
Okay.
This is a darn good team. They're going to be one of the best teams in this open division playoff. I think you can pretty much write them into this open division. I don't see how they would fall to D1. This is really, really one of the best teams here in the city section.
And Birmingham is 5, so it's kind of nice to talk about both teams.
Right, we'll talk about both teams. And El Camino, they've got a chance to avenge it because like we mentioned, they play Granada Hills tonight, but in a couple of weeks they get Birmingham. Both of these schools are full charters. They will have a shot to kind of avenge that loss no matter what happens in this strike. So El Camino Real, it's a tough game. Birmingham, both of these teams are going to be really fun to watch down the stretch. Elko sitting at 6. Whatever first-round matchup they get, they're going to give that team hell. But that game, man, that was so much fun.
Yeah, and going back to Elko for 1 second, it looks like they're going to miss that big rivalry game against Taft on Friday, so that's a shame. But it's safe to say they're still an open division team. They have a lot of non-league, really solid wins. and Birmingham and El Camino Real, they challenged themselves in the non-league, and the West Valley League is the best basketball league in the city, so look for them to get at least 3 teams in, maybe 4, but probably 3, and El Camino Real will certainly be right there. Now it's just a numbers game. Will Birmingham stay ahead of them? Will they beat them again? Time will tell, but Birmingham, going back to them for a second, Alex, we were doubting them a couple weeks ago. Yeah. We had them pretty low in our top 10. Even people on Instagram were saying, why do you have Birmingham still in the top 10? What's going on? They've been losing some games. They showed what they could do against El Camino Real, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, and just look at the schedule. I think maybe we didn't look deep enough into who this team plays. They played Rancho Christian, Santa Margarita, some of the best teams in Southern California. So those losses, you can't read too deeply into them and think, wow, this team really isn't any good. They played the best. So when they get into a game like El Camino Real, they're battle-tested. They're hard. They're ready to go after it. And that was one of the best defensive games I've seen a team put together, because we talked at length about Elko's scorers. We talked about Javale Collins doing well, Ty Rutledge, Ben Todd. As I mentioned earlier, they neutralized Ben Todd. They made him go to his left when that's not the natural way for him to go. He's a guy that likes to go to his right. They doubled him in the post, and he was ineffective. So this team, really, really talented. Corey Cofield had 20 points. Wow. Talked about Elisha Cofield being out. Corey Cofield stepped up. He got buckets. He led that team. And this is a team that's excited to play in the big game. Like you mentioned, this game seemed to be well in hand for El Camino Real. They had a double-digit lead in the first half. Birmingham whittles it all the way down. They tie the game in that third quarter, and then the fourth quarter was just madness. Birmingham, like you mentioned, up against the ropes, but they were never out of it. It's going to be a dogfight come playoff time.
At 4, we have Washington Prep, and we've seen them flip-flop with Taft, 3, 4, all season long. We have them underneath Taft this week because I saw them play Santa Clarita Christian on Saturday, and it just wasn't a pretty game, Alex. They only scored 32 points. And I know it was their 4th game in 4 days, but a couple of those games were league games, and we all know the Imperial League isn't very good, so Washington Prep really had a chance to just kind of go out and really take it easy in those games. So I don't want to use that excuse for them this time. The offense is an issue. They play great defense, and a lot of city section teams who are elite do, but the offense is the problem. Hanson Clark, for me right now, is the only guy who can really fill it up for them. I want to see more from Noel Scott. I want to see more from Hassan Huey. I want to see more from Bilal Mike. These are all returning players from that D1 championship team a year ago. Hanson Clark, if he's not hitting the 3, he can still kind of drive and get inside and play well. I thought offensively he was one of the only players on that Washington team who had a good game. I want to see them kind of come back after this strike and show me what they can do on offense, because it wasn't pretty Saturday.
Yeah, let me play devil's advocate just for a minute. Santa Clarita Christian, I think
it's a good team.
They held Fairfax in the 60s or the 50s. That's a great offensive team.
And they almost beat them.
Almost beat them, and they held Etiwanda to the high 40s. Etiwanda is one of the best teams in the southern section. So you're dealing with a defensive stalwart here at Santa Clarita Christian, but scoring 32 points. Like, as you mentioned, that defense, they only surrendered 46. But when you're scoring 32 points, you're not going to beat anybody. That's a really, really difficult point total to try to get wins with. This is still a good team. We talked about the strike hurting them a lot because I think it would have been nice to get these guys rolling, get on the same page.
Yeah.
But you just said 4 games in 4 days. Maybe it's good they're getting some rest. Maybe the guys can organize some players-only practices to stay fresh. But who knows? Maybe this will actually help them kind of catch their breath a little bit as we head towards the end of the season. And Prep right now, we talked about Taft. That game a couple of weeks ago, you were there. Taft beat them. Taft was behind them this week. They're ahead of them this week. Both of these teams, if they face each other in that first or second round, it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, and one other quick point with Washington Prep. King Drew, they were supposed to play them tonight. That was going to be a great battle for their league championship. That's not going to happen. That Santa Clarita Christian game was really their last difficult game until playoff time. And King Drew's a good team. They're in our top 10. But we probably both would expect Washington Prep to take care of King Drew in the game that they're supposed to play. So Washington Prep had a chance to win a bunch of games in a row here, and the strike was hurting them in that regard. Of course, you're right, Alex. They're getting rest. But they had a chance to go on a nice run into the playoffs and go in hot and maybe solve some of these offensive issues. Of course, hopefully they're doing some players-only practicing, but, you want the coach there. Javante King, I'm sure he's on the picket lines and really just frustrated like a lot of these coaches are, because they had an opportunity to get hot, and now they still probably do if the strike ends soon, but it's not as long as it could have been.
Yeah, it's just difficult. All these teams are dealing with very similar situations. We've got 3 teams in our top 10 that continue to play, but for the rest of these guys,
it's too bad.
You can't. I mean, you can't play games, you can't practice, you can't really do anything. Even when you go to school, Coaches can't be there. They can't be leading practice. So you got to go find a local park and try to practice as a team.
It's raining out here.
Yeah, it's raining. I mean, there are so many obstacles. And as you mentioned, George Washington Prep would have been nice to get hot. Their league schedule was pretty easy. Could have rolled through into the playoffs. And the story's the same. We're going to talk about Taft here in a minute. Story's the same with them.
Yeah, they're at number 3. Their most recent game, they had a nice 20-point win over Granada Hills. They're supposed to play, huge West Valley League game Friday, but they also had a game at the Prep Showcase that Harvey Catani and Rolling Hills Prep is putting on against Colony. That's probably going to get canceled or canceled for Taft. They'll find a replacement. So it's too bad. Teams have a chance now to kind of put the pedal to the floor as we head close to playoff time. Taft won't get it. That win against Granada Hills was nice, though. Kind of solidified themselves as the team to beat in the West Valley League, like I think we all thought. I don't know, though. They're 3 after seeing Washington Prep struggle, but I want to see these teams play, and right now we can't.
Yeah, exactly, and there's nothing we can do. They're also in the Orange Lutheran MLK Classic in a couple of weeks, and they had to replace them. Well, they already made the announcement. Really? They moved Taft out. They had to replace them because a lot of these tournaments, they can't wait and see, right? They can't wait to see if, the strike's going to end. Let's get these city teams back in.
Thank goodness for Coach Catani, who was a city section coach for so many years. He's giving them a deadline until Thursday, which it probably won't happen, but at least he's saying, here's the deadline to do it. If the strike's still up and we can't do it, he's trying to give them his best chance as he can. Teams are going to have to be replaced. It's too bad.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened at Orange Lutheran. They had to go get another team because they can't wait for Taft. They can't wait to see what happens here with the strike. And it's unfortunate because not only are these kids that you want to let them play their senior year, have those experiences, have those moments, but selfishly, for us, for the fans, for the parents, this is great basketball we're missing. We don't get to watch these guys ball out. They don't get to play some of their best basketball here. Who knows when this is going to end? I hope and pray it gets towards the 2nd or 3rd week of league play. 10 days into the strike, we get a resolution so we can at least finish some of these big rivalry games to help decide some of these league winners. Because if it goes all the way through the end of January, what are we going to do?
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex. And remember, they can't push the season back because the state, not just the section, the state is on a timeline that the city has to abide by. Last 2 teams, like it's been all year, 2 Fairfax and then 1 Westchester. Let's talk about Fairfax first, 17-1. They missed a game against Uni Monday, Venice.
And then the biggest casualty of them all, the Westchester-Fairfax game is Friday.
Gonna probably miss that on Friday. I have on my notes, what a shame. Ethan Anderson and Robert McRae, they told me that they organized the off-campus practice at a gym by USC, so that's nice to see. The players still trying to stay in shape. But missing Westchester, they had a big game against Wasatch Academy potentially on Saturday at the State Preview Classic, and it's just not going to happen. And you talked to Ethan, he said that was probably their biggest game of the year besides Westchester, so they're going to miss their 2 biggest games of the year, all because of the strike. You understand the strike and why it's happening, and you feel for the teachers, and you want to get it resolved, but these are the casualties. The kids, it's not their fault, and they're missing these big games.
Yeah, exactly. Solidarity stash. I understand. I know how this is going to go. We got to stand by the teachers. The kids understand how this goes. They support their teachers, but it stinks. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you want to play these basketball games. I talked to Ethan Anderson on my in-depth podcast. He said, Wasatch Academy, that might be our biggest game. We've got Westchester, but Wasatch Academy is one of the best teams in the country as well. And, of course, that Westchester game, it's just a ton of fun. Both of these teams pack the gym. The fans are there. The kids are there. It's just a great environment, a great atmosphere. And their final game, at least for a couple of days, they beat Valencia 82-66. In that game, Ethan Anderson had 24 points, 8 assists, and 5 steals. Keith Dinwiddie, talk about him as well. He's having a nice season after coming back. Had 19 points in that one. And together, they had 30 points from beyond the arc. So this is a team that can shoot. They're an offensive stalwart. The strike's not really going to hurt them so much in terms of seeding. We know they're going to be a number 2 seed, one of the best teams. This isn't going to, drop them down a couple of spots. But it stinks because, frankly, these are the best games in the city, and they're not happening.
So say the strike goes all the way until the playoffs. My question for you would be, who's the number 1 seed? Westchester, their only loss is Sierra Canyon. Fairfax, their only loss is Corona Centennial. They haven't played. Does Fairfax have a shout to be number 1? I know Sierra Canyon, a lot of people think is probably a little bit better than Corona Centennial, but these are still 2 elite teams. How do we know that Westchester's number 1 if they haven't met head-to-head? That could be an issue that we face down the stretch. I hope the game gets rescheduled because I think there is an argument for Fairfax if the teams haven't met head-to-head. Both have incredible resumes.
Yeah. Now, if you're sitting at a table, I'm going to guess it's going to be split down the middle, who wants Fairfax, who wants Westchester. But if it goes to the end, let's be honest, the safe pick is Westchester. They're the defending city champions. They returned just about everybody, and they've only lost to Sierra Canyon. So if you're not trying to go out on a limb...
And I agree with you.
Yeah, that's the safe pick.
I just still think, if they haven't met, that there is an argument to be had. Westchester, number 1, 18-1. They missed game against Laces Monday. University in Fairfax as well. They'll probably miss this week. Maybe Harvard-Westlake on Saturday, most likely, which that would have been one of the games of the year. I'm super bummed about that. Jeremiah Turley, just like Robert McRae and Ethan Anderson, has been organizing Westchester's practices off campus. And we just had the league discussion who would win, or the overall number 1 playoff seed discussion, who would win. And I guess that has to do with who would win the league in the committee's eyes as well. Probably Westchester, but Fairfax has a shout as well. I mean, both these teams are hot. They're winning at an incredible rate, and they can't play. It's too bad.
Yeah, it really stinks. The last game Westchester played was against Hamilton. They beat them 71-14.
I actually went to that game last year. I was still kind of getting my toes wet in LA City basketball.
Oh,
and
tough choice.
Westchester laid down the hammer, and the JV team was going in the second half. Hamilton, I love you, but they should move down a couple divisions, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Western League, nothing you can do. You got to go through the gauntlet every once in a while. Hamilton, as you mentioned, they lost 71-14 this year. To give you some perspective on that loss, 71-14, Westchester on Max Preps, they rank them the 12th team in the nation. Hamilton's ranked the 8,212th team in the nation. So there's a big gap, right? 71-14. It looks pretty silly, but there's an 8,200 team gap between Westchester and Hamilton. But Westchester, as we talked about earlier with Fairfax, they're the safe choice for the number 1. But in the end, it really doesn't matter because we hope to see both of these two teams play their way through the playoffs. Maybe we see them in the Open Division Championship game. And assuming the playoffs happen, that'll be really fun.
Let's move on to the game ball segment where we highlight some of the top players from the past week in the city section. Usually we tip our hands a little bit when we talk about the top 10, mention some of these important players. I have Michael Franklin, who helped Gardena beat Narbonne, and he also scored 31 in a 67-53 win over Carson. He's a junior guard who I don't think is getting enough attention. Scored the ball with the best of them, plays really great defense. Ernie Carr down there at Gardena has his team rolling. And once this strike ends, they'll be back. They've only lost 1 game all year. Franklin's a big reason why he gets the game ball.
I'm going to head out to the San Fernando Valley to give mine to a sophomore guard, Birmingham's Corey Cofield II. We talked about him during our Birmingham segment. He had 20 points in the win, really just kind of put the team on his back. Got it done. Huge West Valley League win. But I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout-out to Tylen Jarrett. Kid only had, I think, 4 points or 6 points, but he got the game-winning steal and bucket. So Tylen Jarrett, you get the co-game ball with your teammate Corey Cofield II. Fantastic game from the both of you.
And that little scrum to get that steal looked like a football pile.
Oh, yeah, loose bean.
Bodies on the floor. That was crazy. Dunk of the week. We're still doing that even though we're not playing because we have one from last week.
Throwing it down.
Since we haven't been able to talk since then. It's Anthony Gamboa from Rancho Dominguez. He puts back a missed shot, and he just slams it home. Rancho Dominguez went on to lose against San Pedro, but I know wins and losses are the most important part of this whole thing, but he walked away with the best highlight in that game. It's a sweet slam from Anthony Gamboa. Remember, if you have a nice dunk, whether it's in practice or in a game, please send it our way, and we'll recognize you. Jamal Street over at the San Pedro Pilot, he sent us this slam, so thank you, Jamal. Keep sending stuff our way. We love it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If you're throwing them down like you mentioned in practice, a guy throws you a sick hoop off the glass, send him in, man. We'd love to give you the pub. It's always fun to watch.
Hopefully the strike ends soon so we can continue this fun show. We want to keep talking city section hoops, but if there are no games, not really sure what we'll do next week, so stay tuned for that. He's Alex Carr. I'm Connor Morissette. We'll see you next time.